Shalini Ji?
Yeah. So, hello everyone. And today we are. Am I audible? Am I visible in the first place?
Yes, yes, you're visible and audible.
Okay. So today this book that we have up for review is called Svayambodha and Shatrubodha, the Hindu view of self and the world. And if you can see me, I can't see myself, but here is the book. And you can see the title there. It's a very pertinent, it's a very apt design because the moment you take a look at it and you see a broken idol, um, it tells you it's a very evocative symbol. It tells you that there is something broken here, and that is what something already problematic that the writer, that the author, Pankaj Saxena, is trying to deal with. So instead of normally we choose the title of the book as the title of the review, but I have gone ahead and titled this review "Training the Hindu Gaze." So it's it's an academic review, but I'm going to put it across very simply so that even somebody who is not well versed with the terms that are going to be introduced here can understand them. Okay, so since I made this and I was discussing this with Biswajit ji, since I made this on Google Notebook LM, it has on its own also given one subtitle at the bottom, and it says Synthesizing the Architecture of Contemporary Indic Civilizational Discourse. It is very right, Google on its own, the title, the subtitle that it has given, because we are witnessing a Hindu revival. However, the problem is, why is it problematic? The term itself, in the revival of Hinduism, is problematic because till now we have had outsiders, namely the West, try to define us, define our beliefs, define our systems, define our problems, define and offer us solutions. Now, in the tradition of Veer Savarkar, in the tradition of Sri Aurobindo, these were really very hallowed names. In the tradition of Ram Sarup Ji, in the tradition of Sitaram Goyal Ji, you have this book, and Pankaj Saxena, by his own admission, borrows heavily from all of them. Here comes a book which tries to define Hinduism from within. So when you are aware of who you are aware of where you are, you have a both of your disha and your dasha, and you try to define yourself, and you try to define the other from your, so the subject is Hindu and he is describing himself rather than being objectified by the West. So therefore, Indic civilizational discourse is taking a turn for the better. So we are now wanting to and capable of turning or giving direction to the discourse on our own by defining ourselves the way we want to be defined, by defining our problems the way we would want them to be defined. So it's synthesizing its architecture. So you see that we are building how the contemporary Hindu where is he placed? And I must say, Pankaj Saxena has dealt with the subject very, very successfully. He is very lenient with the Swayambodha part, the Swayambodha concept. I think he takes only about 130 pages or so from this tome. It's 540 pages or so. The book is really thick, as you can see, and it's a big book. It's a huge book to read. It's pretty readable. Arnavji, you've raised your hand. Is there an issue with
Yeah,
the view?
I think the screen is getting cut by the video. I mean, is it for only me or otherwise? I do not know. See,
Well,
part of
I
your
can't.
screen.
Okay, I can't see myself. Okay. Tell me,
Yeah, your screen is getting cut actually.
it's getting cut. Okay. Let me see what
See,
I can
because the
do
slide, the
about.
bottom left half of the slide is,
Okay.
no, no, I think it
Um,
is something to do with probably the, no, to the Zoom setting. I think it's not the present.
the Zoom setting. Let me check the layout if I can cut myself out of the
Ha.
picture. If I post content only, will that be better?
Yes,
Is
yes,
it
yes.
is it better now? Yes. I don't want you to see me. I want you to see the content. So it serves a purpose. Thank you so much, Arnabji,
Thank
because
you.
I
Yes,
thought it
yes.
was too early to take questions. Well, this is the issue.
Sorry.
It keeps on. Okay, so that is that's about the title. It's very evocative. This Shata Nataraja. Okay, now you won't be able to see the book, the title, but I did show you the picture, and it's the 100 hands of the Nataraja. However, the face of the Nataraja, the hands, all of them have been broken, destructed, and that says a lot about how Hindu civilization has been dealt with in the past millennia or so. So we will get down to analyzing the book, and here goes the first slide. So as I just mentioned, the foundation for looking inside or turning the gaze towards the self was laid down by Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, Lokmanya Tilak, Veer Savarkar, and all these people who have come before us, all these historians who were not shy of calling a spade, even during the British era or during the Mughal era, when when there was a lot that was being suppressed in our expression. So this foundation was laid there. Then the analytical shift came with Ramsarupji and Sitaram Goyalji, because they were very clear that not only should Indians have opinions of themselves, but they should have informed opinions of themselves. So whatever you say, whatever you speak should have backing of historical evidence, backing of historical evidence, anthropological evidence, whatever, or social evidence, or whatever you see around you. So your lived experience, as well as all that is there in your tradition, in your history, both oral history and written history, that should come to your rescue and that should speak for you. So that was the analytical shift. However, in the past some decades, we have seen that there has been an atrophy of Viveka. So Pankaj Saxena basically attributes a lot of issues that are coming up today to the misplaced concept of Viveka or wisdom. Wisdom is not exactly, it's Viveka is a far big umbrella term, which basically means discerning judgment. So it's not really wisdom. It's when you can discern, when you can tell chalk from cheese. That is the discernment. So that has been atrophied, not destructed, not gone. So discriminatory discernment, as he says, is no longer there in the public consciousness. So that is what he addresses. So he says that post-independence Indian discourse lost both its internal spiritual metaphysical anchors and its ability to identify external ideological threats. Why this happened? Why did the spiritual metaphysical anchors get destroyed? Why could it not perceive threats coming from the outside? This also we will discuss, but he says that this necessitated a codified manual for native civilizational theory. So for a very long time, we were kind of in the dark and trying to, make sense out of events. And we did not know who to place our vote or who to vote or who to, side with, let's say. And that is because we lost those parameters that we had used all along to judge who we are and who the opponent is. And merely by knowing who you are and who is on the other side, you can have a very clear-cut idea of where you stand as a civilization. That is the fundamental premise of this book. So here we move on to the next slide, which says the dual architecture of civilizational awareness. So what is Swayambodha? The word itself is self-explanatory, self-awareness and deep knowledge of one's civilizational core. So what are our internal anchors? It is the metaphysics. It is our identity. It is our consciousness. So if anybody from Kashmir, excuse me, anybody from Kashmir and anybody from Kerala call themselves Hindus or Indians, if you try and even for a moment try to reflect on that and try to see and try to, let's say, take out what is common. So if you go to rituals, all the rituals are different. Marriage rituals are different. So otherwise, if you kind of try to see how are we alike, how is a Kashmiri and a Keralite alike, you might find more differences rather than similarities. However, we know that there are some common underlying principles which define a Hindu and an Indian. And these principles are what we will study further in the slides that are to come. Similarly, for Shatrubodha, awareness and comprehension of hostile anti-dharmic worldviews and systems. So, how do we decode? How do we understand that the person who is doing the sweet talk standing opposite us is not a friend but an enemy? And he says, without Swayambodha, society lacks a core to defend. You do not know what you are defending. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know of your identity, what are you defending? And without Shatrubodha, so this also refers to the mass conversions that are happening, because when somebody makes fun of you or your religion, you would not know what to say, because you do not know, you have not been exposed to your fundamental internal anchors, so to speak. And this, he says, has is what a society falls prey to. Without Shatrubodha, society repeatedly mistakes existential ideological hostility for misunderstandings. We say, oh, these people might be offensive, they might be aggressive, but they're not bad people. Not all people or who profess to come from prophetic monotheist religions are bad. That is, the underlying statement that we have often heard from people who try to be placating in their worldview. So we dismiss anybody who is an enemy, saying that, oh, this is a misunderstanding, this is politics. We really don't understand them very well, so we should give them some benefit of doubt. So both these problems arise because we do not have Swayambodha and we do not have Shatrubodha. So first we will come to Swayambodha. So Swayambodha, he has spent very little time on. The reason being, he says that there is so much of diversity in India. I do not want to spend time on discussing the diversity. Why? Because below all that diversity, there is a fundamental unity. So there is a fundamental belief system, although we are probably not aware of these terms per se, but we all follow. It is how they say, in the air. These belief systems are in the air in India or in our civilization, and they define a Hindu. So the four axioms of the Indic worldview. So maybe you've heard or read of one or two of them. So the four fundamental ones are Rita or Rita, Satya, Dharma, and Rina. So Rita means there is a cosmic order. This is how it is. So there may be many gods who have forms, but there is one underlying harmonious unity that or consciousness that runs this universe or the multi-universes. So you can any god or anybody who prays, or there's a sect that does not even, let's say, pray to a god with a form, even they are okay, they are fine, because Because the underlying consciousness, the consciousness that is supreme consciousness, is the one that runs this universe or these universes. And things happen according to an order. Here, of course, there is an important theory, the theory of karma, which is given in the Bhagavad Gita, which is oft quoted in, in any context, whether it's politics or, neighbors, kids fighting or anything. We often, say that, this is karma. So that is the underlying theory that describes the Rita, the way things are run in the cosmos. Then there is Rina. Rina is indebtedness from the Rita. Because things happen in a certain order, you have Rinas. So there are 5 Rinas. So Rita, let's say the first Rita is that we are born. So when we are born, we are incapable of taking care of ourselves. Somebody has to feed us, somebody has to clean us, somebody has to, teach us stuff. And because of that, we have rinas. So there is a Deva rina, there is a Rishi rina, there is a Pitru rina. So that in itself is it gives rise to the concept of duty, and we will discuss this concept of duty very thoroughly in the coming slides, because that is how we are very different from societies which focus a lot on rights and then get entangled in trying to define rights, or, whose rights are more important. So the hierarchy of rights, they cannot be decided. Whereas there are rarely issues with duties. Maximum you can have a competitiveness, let's say among siblings who want to serve, let's say have a duty towards their father. So when you perform your duties, your rights are taken care of automatically. So, and here also rises the Varna system. So there are so many things that arise from these 4 axioms. So this is an axiomatic worldview. Then there is Dharma. We know that Dharma is righteousness. So the way things need to be done. And this is why we are often told that we need to study our scriptures, because Dharma has a lot of gray areas. So we know that people who are very well versed in Dharma, even they at times can get confused as to what is Dharma, what is the right thing to do. And therefore you need guides, spiritual guides to guide you through life about what is dharma. We have the example of Bhishma Pitama, who was very clear about how a state ought to be ruled. However, when Draupadi's Vastraharan happened, he was not sure. It was not as if he wanted it to be done, but he did not stop it because he was not sure whether he should stop it. He ought to stop it. However, when Krishna intervened, Krishna, who was, of course, the avatar himself, he had no doubt as to what is dharma. So you see, even during the Mahabharata war, where there are a lot of places where Krishna chooses a greater dharma for the lesser dharma. And dharma is run according to a hierarchy of order, and we'll study that hierarchy also. Again, and the last concept, which is very important, is Satya. Satya is the truth, and truth is the screen on which the movie of our life is played, or the movie of the cosmic Maya is played. So it doesn't change. And the search for that truth and the alignment with that truth is what your life is all about. So these 4 axioms, why are we discussing them? We're discussing them because when we will move further and study the concept of Shatrubodha, we will see that prophetic monotheistic religions, they do not have an axiomatic worldview. They have a very rigid, dogmatic, didactic worldview. For example, the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are given. They are a given, and you cannot doubt them, you cannot argue about them, you just have to accept them. And from that belief, you have to live your life. However, axiom means, okay, these are there and you can test them for yourself. So they are open to being tested, they are open to being discussed, they are open to being analyzed, they are open, it's an open discourse. So this is the difference between the Indic worldview and we will read later the other worldviews. Next, uh, just one sec. Okay, at the bottom I have written dharmic plurality naturally yields a manifold non-dogmatic structure distinct from the mainstream Western paradigm of unity in diversity. This phrase is extremely important. He's discussed this in great detail. So the West says they are looking for unity in diversity. So let's say um, there are 100 species of flowers in front of you. From those flowers, you draw uh, your conclusions as to what a flower looks like. Whereas the Indic worldview or the Hindu worldview says there is diversity in unity. So the baseline, there is only consciousness, or as in Advaita Vedanta, there is only gold. All the ornaments, whether you make a ring out of it or earrings out of it or a necklace out of it, all the ornaments that you make out of that gold are gold and expressions of that gold. Therefore, there is underlying unity. Unity is the thing that is that gives rise to diversity. So you don't have to say, oh, this is part of this, and then there is lesser categorization, lesser rigid categorization. So in opposition with the concept of unity in diversity, we have diversity in unity. So there is one fundamental truth or one fundamental consciousness from which has sprung all the expression of this consciousness. So you and I, this laptop, our rooms, wherever we are sitting, they are all expressions of the same consciousness. So there is nothing different really. And that is dharmic plurality. And therefore, there is no rigid categorization. And also, as I said, these axioms are open to discussion and they are open to experience. So you can experience them for yourself and then decide if they are correct or not. Now we discuss some concepts quickly. I'm sure most of us are aware of these concepts, even if we are not, and why he discusses these. So there are four states that that form the basis of our lived experience. The first state is the Jagrat Avastha or the waking state, where we interact with the external and the material world in our everyday lives, how we go about our businesses, how we go about our jobs, how we go about our education and studies, research, interacting with our families, society. That is all happening in the Jagrat Avastha. The second avastha is the swapna or the dreaming state where you interact with internal mental impressions. So these are unresolved mental impressions that you gather when you are interacting with the world during your Jagrita Avastha. So things that are left unresolved um, or things from the past, things sometimes from the future, all of these get entangled and we have a state that is called the Swapna state. So this is the dream state. The third state is the Sushupti or the deep sleep state, which is the unmanifested restful potential. So you see there is a lot of action in the Jagrat and the Swapna Avastha. In the Jagrita Avastha, of course, you are acting because you are waking, you are in a waking state, you are interacting with the world and going about your chores. In the Swapna Avastha also, you notice, although your body is not active, there has been noticed a lot of activity of the pupils, a lot of activity in the mind. Certain regions in the brain become very sometimes overactive when one is dreaming. And there is a lot of activity associated with these first two states. However, in Sushupti, so both the first two states you can call as the expression of the kinetic energy of an individual, whereas Sushupti is the unmanifested and restful potential from where springs our energy or the will or the direction in which in which we take our lives, in which we live our lives. The fourth state is the state that we aspire to, or everyone ought to aspire to. So there is always this slight difference between the Western worldview and the Indian worldview. So they believe that we are bodies that have a soul. And the Indic worldview says, or the Hindu worldview, more specifically, the Sanatani worldview says that you are a soul who is having an experience. However, you have to go beyond this active action wala experience, go beyond this even restful potential experience into that non-dual state where you are one with that pure consciousness which is actually running the entire tamasha. So that is the state of Turiya. And therefore, because we are aware, we might not know these terms, but we are aware that they in our folk songs, even in our film music, in our literature, in all our outer expressions, there is this yearning towards, or this pull towards Turiya, which is getting in getting into the state where you are one. So this mud, which has different expressions, we can be a pot, we can be a glass, we can be any other utensil, but when in Turya we realize that at the end of the day we are only mud. So that is the baseline that we aspire to. This is the pyramid of Svayambodha, and this is what I was talking of when I talked of Rina. So Rina, how does the Rina happen? So first of all, we are are Rinis to our kula, which is our family. Then there comes the jati, which is the community. So the family sustains us from the moment we are born. So does the community at a different level, at a higher level. Then the sampradaya, the tradition that you belong to. So you see that you identify with the tradition that you belong to. It sustains you. Let's say if you belong to a particular tradition where they observe a lot of rituals of the Devi. So you see that all your festivals are oriented or aligned towards the expression of the Devi element. If you identify with a tradition that deifies Krishna or Shiva, so you will have similar experiences. So these traditions, they provide the color to our life and they sustain us. Then there is Kshetra, which is the sacred geography. And you would know if you are still in touch with your small towns or villages where you come from, there is always a Kshetrapal or a Kshetra Devata, like a Kula Devata, who sustains you even when you leave that geography, you go out of that area. And if you are in trouble, people who still come from villages, they call out to their Kula Devata or their Kshetrapal or their Kshetra Devata when in danger. Then is your Desha or your region. So Veda says, who backs you when you are in a foreign country? So it's basically your country. You take the name of your country, and that is all the support that you have. So recently, things have taken a turn for the better, where the moment you have identified yourself as an Indian in a foreign country, which is caught in conflict, wars have stopped and Indians have been rescued. So Desha, if your Desha is strong, that is your that provides you respite, that provides you security. And finally, it's your Rashtra or the civilization. So the civilization is far beyond the concept of a country. We do not consider the boundaries of the Rashtra confined to the boundaries of the political boundaries of our nation. It goes beyond where your civilization or where your culture flourishes and is acknowledged. Why is this pyramid important? This is important because today, in this culture of hyper individualism and liberalism, there have been instances. One sec. Where we have been asked to look at all these structures through a lens of oppression. So, your family is supposed to only oppress you. Whatever community says is usually, it's viewed through a very oppressive lens. Oh, your community is patriarchal. Oh, your community is anti-pride. Oh, your community is so whatever lens you view through. So it says that you have to break free of this entire pyramid and exist and identify only as an individual. However, we know that if you exist and identify only as an individual per se, it's like being tossed like a football in the field of life. And also, the moment you understand that there is this entire pyramid that exists to protect you, you will also work towards strengthening that pyramid. So the more you strengthen that pyramid, the more the pyramid protects you. And yeah, so now, I mean, it's an open secret. The beliefs that our generation and the coming generation has about a family. So we have people who do not want to have children or raise children, and they say we are doing very well with our cats and dogs. So they forget that children enrich your lives, and children, it's not about carrying the family name only. It's about building a set of relationships that sustains you when, let's say, I'm not talking of deep distress or financial ruin. I'm talking of everyday life. Even when, let's say, you not in a good mood, there is family to sustain you. So we are not investing in our families as much as we should, because the hyper individualistic Western liberal thought has taught us that family is oppressive. I recently have a friend in the States who says that in the States now they are decrying going to or having children go to therapists, because woke therapists, the first thing that they do to children, especially teens, is after a little emotional sympathizing, they say that your family is toxic. Then the next step is to build distrust with the family members. Then next comes cutting ties or going silent, as they say. And then that individual, that little child, I mean, a teenager is a child by any stretch of imagination, unable to, sustain himself individually in this world. And then that individual is open to any kind of manipulation the moment he goes into state hands. So a lot of Americans are now saying that therapy is actually doing more harm than good. So this is what she was sharing. So this comes from the belief that the liberal belief that all these systems are where people get together as a society, whether it's a family or a community or sampradaya or kshetra, desha, rashtra, anything. They are oppressive per se. So this has to go. So he spends about 130 pages on Svayambodha, but I see that I've spent quite a lot of time on Svayambodha. So we now move on to Shatrubodha, which is how do we understand external and institutional threats. So external threats can be of two types. One is the threat to the religion, the majority religion in India. The other is a more subtle and almost invisible threat of institutions that have been put in place that propagate the views of the Western views, which are not which have been kind of copy pasted on the Indian civilization and do not hold good here. So let us take a look at how they are different. Who is a dharma following person and what is an orthodoxic imperative? So as compared to orthodoxy, we have another term for ourselves which is called orthopraxy. Orthodoxy means there is a belief and you have to follow it. Orthopraxy, as I said before, is where you practice and through practice arrive at the conclusion that this practice must be followed. Instead of first starting with a belief and saying, oh, that there is only one God, and not only one God, only one form of that God. For example, if we are following Krishna, one person may follow the Bal Gopal Swarup of Krishna. One person may follow the young Krishna. So there are so many Swarups of Krishna. So Panduranga, Vithala, other forms of Krishna. However, in orthodoxic religions, there is only one form and only one kind of form, and that is the only form that needs to be followed. The temporal framework is linear time. What happens? We have cyclical time. We know that yugas come and go, and we have always been here. We keep coming back. That by itself phases out a lot of problems. When you are compressed into a linear time, there is an urgency to give closure any which way. If you do not understand the solution, still go about it any which way and find closure, because we are moving ahead. So we are hurtling ourselves towards doom if we do not do that. So that temporal framework by itself is, it kind of restricts our thinking. Metaphysics, as far as metaphysics is concerned, they have this one life doctrine. You have only one life, you're not coming back. We know that reincarnation, it should not make us complacent, but sometimes it does. We by the end of our lives, if we feel that, oh, we've not achieved enough, maybe we will do this in the next lifetime. However, that also gives us some very beautiful concepts, the concepts of gratitude, for example. So if our elders tell us that supposing you, for without any reason, you start feeling happy, believe that there is this blessing from your pitras. Somebody has blessed you in the Pitrulok, and you suddenly feel a fleeting feeling of happiness, moves through you. So there is this feeling of gratitude. So we are our Pitras actually. So we are in a cycle, and we take birth again and again and right the wrongs that we have done. So we are not eternally sinned. We are not damned. We are not doomed. So this gives you hope. This gives you scope for maneuverability. This gives you beautiful feelings, as I said, of gratitude. And this also gives you wisdom. Then you understand, I must have done, because if you feel that injustice has been done to you, you understand that injustice, you're feeling that injustice because it is a reaction. Then the action must have happened in some earlier lifetime, because the doer will never feel anything. Only the one who is the victim will feel. So if you are a victim right now, something has been done in a previous lifetime. So that again, that karmic theory comes in. As far as the epistemology is concerned, you have universal compliance. You don't have any scope for maneuverability. Whatever is said has to be followed in letter and spirit. However, in the dharmic orthopraxy continuum, you have to experience and you can choose your own path. In Hindu homes, it is a common practice that there are a lot of Devi Devatas in our the place where we worship, and the mother follows Shiva, the father follows Hanuman, the daughter follows Krishna, the son follows somebody else. So that is a very common this thing. Or sometimes they won't follow any of the idols placed there. They will follow only a guru, or maybe you can even have nastikas in your home, and everybody is okay with it. The family is okay with it. So we are okay with having a god, any form of a god, many forms of God, no God. And it's not, it's not imperative that you follow the only path that is prescribed. What is the resulting impulse? The resulting impulse is quickly proselytize, spread the word of the God, convert, subjugate, erase any civilization, any religion that contrasts with your beliefs. This is Shatrubodha. That is the singular reason we cannot have engagement with prophetic monotheistic religions. So, more about that. The long arc. Okay, so this was about religion. Now let us talk of institutional subversion. How institutions have also led. So our judiciary, sadly, our education system, a lot of our institutions, or even the way these institutions are governed has come from the West. So how did this originate? This originated because of the Protestant Christian theology, where they had a lot of conflict with religion. So the state had a lot of conflict with religion, and there was privatization of religion done. So then there was an establishment of the secular state. Okay, so what does a secular state mean? Secular state does not mean that you are going to undermine the authority of God. It just says, secular state just says that you will still rule under in the name of God, and you will and this is according to the Martin, let's say, yeah, this is Martin Luther King. So Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, Martin Luther, the original saint, he says that one second, I'm trying to remember the quote. He says that the state will take care, or state will suppress all non-Christian activities. So if you, let's say, are transplanting that same ideology to the Indian state, so what this means is, if this is a Hindu country, Hindu majority country, then a secular government at the center will control all non-Hindu activities. However, this has not gone that way. It has come to mean that secular means a complete divorce from religion. And that is not what it meant even in the West. So this was transplanted, as I've said, as I've shown in this diagram, in the post-colonial India. So our academia, our state judiciaries, our NGOs, our media, they're all run according to this belief that we have to be secular, because if we are not secular, then we are not giving space or expression to these minorities, forgetting that secularism per se is possible in India only because of its Hindu majority. So the people who are giving expression to their unrest, or let's say different beliefs, it is because this country allows them to. So in the long run, this has become anti-Indic, anti-Hindu. It's because it was transplanted, it was a complete lift off. Instead of just understanding the spirit of secularism, they just imposed the concept. So colonialism imposed that concept on the institutions. So even if and Ambedkar had said that. So there is something in the constitution that I am still not happy with, and that is that there is too much of too much of uh, we are laying too much of um, uh, what would I say? We are putting too much of weight on our rights. So rights will later on, people are going to have it's going to be a fight for rights, because people will forget their duties, and because this is not rooted in the dharmic principles of the Indic worldview. Now, the outcome of this is that the temple-centric dharmic social organizations have been marginalized. So now, if you look at this outcome, you will understand when I said the internal metaphysical anchors of the Hindus were broken when uh, uh, just before independence and especially after independence. So if there is an idol stolen from a temple, people, we spent all our childhood listening to news that, oh, this idol, there was a idol stolen from this temple down south or some temple in the east, and then it was, put on auction in London or wherever, and no one used to raise an eyebrow. It was a given, and people used to feel very not bothered, so they had become apathetic to that condition, and that was because you do not feel that it has got anything to do with you, because your institutions have taught you that the moment you say, oh, I feel for this, you are being non-secular, and therefore you are being intolerant. So by design, these institutions were put in place. So at the bottom, we see that the conclusion that we can draw is that modern secularism is not an objective arbiter. It is the secularized institutional expression of a Christian derivative. So this comes from Christianity. So therefore there is this asymmetry of engagement. When we say, oh, compare, please compare all the religions. All religions are same. No, they are not same. Why? Because on one side is the open network of orthopraxic religions like Hinduism. Why? Why are we vulnerable? We say, oh, we are non-exclusive, so we are inclusive. You have a god, you don't have a god, you have a different form of a god, what you may look different. We accept all of you. So you see, even when Buddhism and Jainism came in by Vedic philosophy, they are called Nastikas because they do not accept the Vedas as the absolute truth. And still we accepted them because we thought it's okay. They have their, it's okay. They think different, but that's okay. That's fine. But that exposes us to all these um, absorbing funnels, the prophetic monotheistic religions, because they are aggressively sucking in or converting. And why are they doing that? Because they have exclusive orthodoxic theologies which operate on a zero sum mandate. It requires elimination of all polytheistic traditions. They say just because you follow a different god, that is wrong. You cannot do that. So, even if we do not have to destroy you as a person, we have to destroy your civilization and then rebuild it again according to the way we want to. Or we have to convince you to convert to our religion because that is the only way out. So, we have three monotheistic major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We don't have too many issues with Judaism because Judaism doesn't bother us. It doesn't say it doesn't good or bad. It may pass judgment on us, but it doesn't say convert to our religion. However, Islam and Christianity actively go in for conversions, one by the word of God, one by the sword, and we are sitting ducks to this absorbing funnel of prophetic monotheistic religions. So this asymmetry ensures that engagement between these two systems results in civilizational erosion. So if there is a knife in one hand and let's say a fruit in the other, and both clash, you can see that the fruit that is softer will suffer the damage, not the knife. So if you turn soft and you say, this is also right, that is also okay, this is also welcome, that is also welcome, then you open yourself to this absorbing funnel. And if you do not have a clear sense of Shatrubodha, if you do not formalize this through your institutions into all the people who profess your faith, you will have this absorbing funnel, absorb or try to at least absorb. Okay, so then I will not. These are basically uh, some uh, conclusions from the book. So the first is the conceptual innovation, where it says the pyramid of Svayambodha creates a hierarchy. This we have already done. Metaphysical synthesis. The synthesis says that all these concepts, these Rita, Rina, all these concepts have been, defined very clearly in the book. There is a very good critique provided. There is a historical mapping how monotheistic worldviews have converted societies that did not believe in their gods. And also the book, what the book does is it divides um, dharma and adharma into clear binaries. So you can use these binaries. So this is why I said this is a seminal work in the tradition of Sri Aurobindo, Swami Vivekananda, and also Sitaram Goyalji and Ram Sarup Ji. The reason is that it gives you the ammunition, it arms you with the fundamental beliefs with which you can, after reading or studying or imbibing which, you become very clear and you can clearly identify who is on your side and who is on the other side and what their intentions are. And Saxena says that Sanātana Dharma should be understood not as a passive relic of the past, but as a living civilization with its own unapologetic category of critical analysis. So he writes, as I said before, he writes as an insider, a Hindu writing from the inside about Hinduism, about the Indian civilization. And he says that we are quite capable of critiquing ourselves, assessing ourselves, and putting our points forward. Let us do that. As I said before, we need to have opinions, but informed opinions of ourselves. If we do not have those, if we do not have Svayambodha, if we do not have Shatrubodha, and in one of his interviews, he said that he was cautioned that you are using words like Svayambodha and Shatrubodha, you might be cut off from certain elite academic circles. He said that's okay. Somebody who is not even from the BJP, who's not from the Sangha, who's not, who doesn't subscribe to that ideology, an independent thinker who has toured over 1500 temples and documented has done documented research on those temples. If somebody like him cannot speak, then who will speak? So somebody has to call a spade a spade. He has done that very wonderfully. Thank you. So we now open the forum for questions, if there are any.
Yeah, just a moment.